Living my bucolic life, free healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful my houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Get myself situated here. So this is going to be my first project in October 2024, which is, if you're following along, our change in season vibes is the challenge for this month. So where a lot of us are, it's going into fall. I know some of you are going into spring, so you celebrate spring, please do. But what I am going to be doing is making a top using fleece. And a lot of times when you're in the shops, you see these beautiful fleeces, but the only thing usually I can think of to do is blankets. And how many fleece blankets can one person really have, you know? So I'm going to be using actually this pattern and making the cape part out of my fleece, and then there's like an underblouse part that I'm going to be making out of a lining fabric, so it's not too thick. Something I'm going to be doing is, this pattern is too big. I bought the wrong size, and my size is actually 2 sizes smaller than the smallest ones here. So I'll be showing you how I modify the pattern to make it fit me. But this is the fleece that I am using, very fall-ish. It's very foxy. Can you see the foxes? I can't see it in the camera, but trust me, there's little foxes all over on here. It's a cozy fabric. So let me turn the camera down. We'll look at the pattern, look at the fabric, and figure out how to do this. So for my pattern, it looks like we have 2 versions. One where the cape comes lower in the back, and, well, it looks like they both come low in the back. Maybe it's the front. Maybe the front is lower on one than the other. Maybe that's the change. Other than that, I don't really see it. So for this pattern, they do include a pants pattern, but I'm not going to be doing that right now. But there you go. They look very nice, wide-legged pleated pants. But this is the fleece, and it's a standard weight, you know, polyester fleece. But I think that it's going to be nice. I think that this could be something really cozy to throw on, you know. So because there's only a few seams on this, resizing it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So let me go ahead and get my pattern pieces cut out, and then we'll make those alterations. Well, I stand corrected. This is just a cape. This isn't a bodice part. I was looking at it, and I was thinking one thing, but it's obviously not. It's just one big cape. And instead of sleeves, it has these big guys as sleeves. And it looks like they might have them kind of tacked together on the side, but it's hard to tell. So I'm thinking, yeah, you're definitely going to have to wear something underneath this. A little camisole tank top or something might be good, but that's fine. That is just fine. But still, I do need to make it smaller, even though it is a cape. It does have seams right here where the shoulders kind of are, and I want to make sure that that's not overly exaggerated. My pattern unfolded, and I can tell you, it looks like the difference between the views is view A is about 4 or 5 inches shorter and slightly narrower, because on this piece it has a cutting line in a little bit. So that's it. And I'm going to be doing view A because now that I know I have to do my fleece in all of these pieces, I'm concerned that I might not have enough. So We may be making even further modifications, but for right now, I'm going to be cutting it out at view A at the smallest size in this set, which is 20. I need to get this down to a 16, but I'll show you that, but I'm just going to start out cutting it on the size 20 line. Actually, I need to back up and say I'm not cutting it out yet because that would not be a smart thing to do. I need to get my new cutting line marked before I do that. So let me raise you up here. All right, hopefully you can kind of see where these lines are. What I'm going to do in general is, this is a gradiated pattern, so we have different sizes. And if like every seam is going to be slightly different. So right here, just ignore that this is already cut right there. If I put my ruler over here, I can see that there is 3/8 of an inch in between each size, okay? And I need to make my piece 2 sizes smaller. So on this seam, and it gets different up there, so above this notch I'll be doing something different, but from this notch down, I need to do 3/4 of an inch, which is 2 times 3/8 of an inch in from this line. So if I get a pen, and right now I'm going to place my ruler, so from this notch down, because again it narrows up here, I'm going to draw a line, so at 3/4 of an inch in from the cutting line here, okay? So let me get this one drawn, and then I'll show you where it transitions from a larger space to a smaller one. Okay, got myself situated here. So I'm going to be taking this line 3/4 of an inch in, which is twice 3/8 of an inch. And this is the cutting line for my view A, okay? Now I can measure between these different sizes and see that they're 1/4 inch apart. So if I'm taking it down 2 sizes, I need to bump this up 1/2 inch. All right, so this is my cutting line here. And I want it to stay consistent, at least until I get past my stitching line, which is 5/8 of an inch in. So I'm going to draw this line 1/2 inch up, about 1 inch in, okay? Then, because all of these pieces are kind of swooping down to this one central front point, I'm going to put my little ruler here. This is a flexible ruler. You can bend it however you want. And as long as I get it somewhat of a gentle slope, I think it's fine. If it's not exactly the same slope as the other ones, that's okay. Okay, so now this is my new cutting line for that front part. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. The center is obviously cut on a fold, so that doesn't change. So at this point, that's my bottom. Okay, I'm going to throw that away. And then coming up here at the top, this is going to be my cutting line here that we drew in, okay? But up here, I want to figure out what's going on right here, right above that little intersection point at the shoulder. Okay, so again, putting my ruler up here, they're about 1/4 inch apart. So again, 2 times 1/4 is a half inch. So I'm going to draw my line, again, about 1 inch long up here. Okay, where my new cutting line needs to be. And then I can connect this point to this point. And you may be saying to yourself, wouldn't it be easier just to go exchange this pattern for one that fits? Well, probably. But sometimes patterns are out of date, you know, and you can't just go and get a new one. And sometimes you're like me and you live in the middle of nowhere and you really want to get something done, so this doesn't take that much longer. Okay, so up here at the top, this distance between those sizes is somewhere between 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch. It's right smack dab in the middle. So what is that? 1, 2, 2.5/8 is 2, 4, 5/16 if we want to be precise. But, okay, 2.5 plus 2.5 is 5. 5/8 is what I need to add here in order to get 2 sizes in. And instead of doing all that math, if you just want to measure the distance between 2 sizes, that will work for you too. That would probably have been easier than doing the math here. So if I'm taking it down 2 sizes, you can see, oh, that's 3/4 of an inch. Up here, if I'm taking it down 2 sizes, you can see, oh, that's 1/2 inch. Just like here, if I'm taking it down 2 sizes, you know, measuring between those two, you can see it's 5/8, all right? So then, right here, there's not a whole lot of space, but I can see that between 2 sizes is 3/16 of an inch, okay? So I'm going to come here from where this one is, okay? Because on this pattern, the smallest size is way out here, the furthest, okay? Because it's kind of shifted in. This is my neckline. I know I'm upside down, but it works better for me that way. So if I'm going to decrease this, I'm actually going to be bumping it out this way by 3/16 of an inch. So I'm putting my ruler so it's lining up with this line, and I'm bumping it out 3/16 of an inch from this line, okay? So it's like that, and then again, coming down 1 inch, all right? So that's my neckline. Then, coming down here, you have to pay attention to where the sizes are. Coming down here, you can see the smallest size is now at the bottom, okay? And again, just like before, if I measure 2 sizes is 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna add a 1/2 inch down here. And since this is cut on a fold, I don't need to go the full inch. 1/2 inch is fine. And now I need to use my curve to connect this point to this point. And I think that's pretty good. So that's the process. I'm going to be using this same process for the sleeve pieces and the back piece, which should be pretty self-explanatory, hopefully. And so this kind of works the same way if you need to add. Say you have a pattern and you need to add. Well, instead of taking out 1/2 inch for 2 sizes, you could bump it out 1/2 inch for 2 sizes, you know. More than 2 sizes, things get a little iffy sometimes, but I think that that's safe. So let me go ahead, get my other 2 pieces modified and cut out my just pattern, and I'll show you how those match up together in just a moment. Okay, so I've got all 3 pieces cut down. Thankfully, there are no facing pieces, no confusion on this pattern, so this is easy. It would have been smart for me if I had transferred over where my notches and dots were before I cut them off and threw them away. That would have been smart, and I encourage you to also, but I didn't. Thankfully, on my sleeve piece, I can still see where these dots are on the sides, and I can still see where this top dot is right here. So this is going to line up to where my shoulder seam is. So I just put my ruler at 5/8 of an inch, which is my seam allowance, came straight down from where those dots are and put a new one, because that's going to be the point to match up to my shoulder seam. I know this is the front over here, even though I cut off the notches. If I can spell, that would be nice. And this is the back over here. The back side always has 2 notches, the front has 1, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get these cut out. This front one is cut on a fold. This back one is not, and it's a lot longer. And hopefully I can fit it on my piece of fleece. Okay, I got my 2 top pieces cut out, and I wanted to show you something. This is my big sleeve, capey kind of piece. And if I put it, I've got selvage over there, fold over here, you know, it's doubled. If I put it on grain, and I want to do that because I have a very directional print. I don't want upside down boxes. It is too wide. It peaks off over here and on the other side also. So just because me being me, instead of opening it up and wasting a lot of fabric and everything, I'm just going to stick my finger right here and kind of center it so I have the same amount peeking off on each side. Fold up the bottom over here until it's going to fit on my fabric like that. And that's going to be my new cutting line. I'm taking in, well, double this, so probably about 3 inches total on the bottom, because this is about 1.5 inch pleat. But I don't think that that's going to make one bit of difference, and I can fit it on my fabric and everything like that. So just thought I would point that out. Okay, so there you go. I think that's going to be just fine. I'm not stressed about it. I want to point out that when you're adjusting patterns a whole lot like this, when you're doing seams, always start at the top and work your way down, so that if there is any adjustment to be made or any one piece a little longer than the other, because it can happen, it'll be at the bottom of your garment, so then you can just trim it even and hem it. You know, that's a whole lot better than sewing this way and then getting up to the top and having things off. Just putting that out there. Okay, this is actually going to go together pretty darn fast. So let me go ahead, throw some matching thread on my machine. I'm just going to use Rosie today. I'll show you her in a minute, and we'll get started. Okay, so like always, before you sew your garment, do a test swatch on the same fabric and thread to make sure you get your tension right. And what I do is, you know, I do a few different seams, but one on the straight of grain to make sure it's going to lay nicely, one on the bias or the stretch, and then I pull that until something pops, okay? Using regular thread, a thread is going to break. The side that it breaks on first is tighter than the opposite side. And technically what you want is to be able to pull it so that both sides break at the same time. But for this fabric, you know, I'm happy just to get it so that when I first started, I broke a lot wider and everything on one side, and then it was smaller and then smaller. So I think that I'm pretty good here. Fleece is a little bit tricky sometimes, but that's how I do it, you know. Just thought I would point that out. So I'm going to get started with my back piece here, and here's the waistline. It's very long, should cover my patuki. So here is a dot up here at the top that we're going to need to do some stuff with, because this is going to be open with a little button closure up here and like a little opening here. So my seam is going to start at that point. So if you look on the pattern, they're going to have you mark where that dot is. Okay, but the important thing is that I need to mark a dot where I'm going to have my opening start. And so I'm just going to stick my coaster underneath the tissue paper. This is the smaller one, and I'm doing 2 sizes smaller than that. So I'm going to come down about 1/2 inch, punch out a hole, and let's see if blue will show up on here. I'm going to reach through there and draw in my dot, okay? I need to do that to both sides, and then after you have the dot, they want you to do a straight stitch seam going through it just to reinforce it, about 1 inch before and 1 inch after, okay, at that 5/8 inch seam allowance on both pieces at that dot. Okay, so I've got my little reinforcement stitching in. I was just looking at the instructions, and they are wanting you to use French seams to put this together. And I am assuming that is because if this is big and open, you're going to be able to see the inside seams, and they want to make sure it has a really nice clean finish. And for any fabric in general other than fleece, I would probably do that. But this is so thick, it's not going to unravel. I'm not going to worry about it, so I am going to be skipping the entire French seam thing. I have other videos that show using French seams, so hopefully you've seen those and everything and you know how to use it, but I'm just going to be sewing this differently because this is a quick and easy using fleece kind of a project, you know. So I have clipped up to my circle, but not through my stitching line. Okay, so those are going to be nice and open. I need to match this up here from this point all the way to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to pin it together and sew it at 5/8 of an inch all the way down. Okay? And I wanted to show you, I am using Rosie today. She's my great standby. I love her. And I'm actually going to be doing something fun with this wall soon, hopefully. Hopefully. I'll let you know as soon as my supplies get here. But yeah, I'm going to be doing a fun thing. Okay, so over here at my ironing board, if you can see, I am pressing the seam allowance open. And yes, you can iron fleece, just don't press down hard, move fast, use a lot of steam, and that's fine. In the instructions, they want you to go ahead and get the finish on this little seam going on here. So what I'm going to do is first press it at the 5/8 inch seam allowance-ish on both sides. You know, fleece is thick, so it's kind of approximate. And then tuck it in, so I end up with probably closer to a 3/8 inch hem. And then I'm just going to edge stitch it down this side, cutting over and then back up this side. So I've got that in. So on the outside, it's fleece. Yes, you can see that indentation, but it's not that big of a deal, you know. I don't think so, at least. So let me go back to the table, and we're going to sew the shoulder seams to the front to the back. So the front piece is cut on a fold. So we're just going to take this pattern off. And there really isn't a right or wrong side here, as far as I can tell. It looks like on one side the print is a little more sharp, so I'm going to call that the right side. I did not pay attention on the back piece, so, you know, it is what it is. Now I need to match up my shoulder seams, and as you can see, even though I made a whole bunch of adjustments because they were in proportion, it still fits. Okay, so I'm going to sew straight across here at 5/8 of an inch on both shoulders, and then press those seam allowances open. I just wanted to show you where we are right now. I just put this on here to get an idea what kind of proportions we're dealing with. So the shorter length is going to hit so that, like, if I'm wearing something with a belt or something, or with a waistline, this is going to be right at that point, which is kind of cute. That way you don't have that really, you know, long line right at the fullest part of your hips, you know, like this. But, you know, there will be the capey sleeves here. But then the back comes nice and low, and because it kind of curves up, it's actually, I think, going to be kind of fun and kind of flattering in a way. And I didn't plan it, but I do have a little fox front and center up there, so that's cute. Okay, let me get my sleeves, whatever we're going to do with them. I guess we're just going to sew them on. Okay, before I bring that piece over, I'm just going to put a pin up here at the top, where this center top point is, where this dot is, so that I can have a position to match up with my shoulder seam. And once I have that, also, I am going to, with my blue pen, it's kind of showing, kind of not, I just need it for a few minutes, I'm putting a letter B. Looks like an ink blot, you know, but that way I know that I will end up with two opposites and with the back on the back instead of flipping them around and everything. Okay, so taking this pattern piece off here, these pins are marking where my shoulder seam is going to get pinned on, and I'm looking at the right side of my garment. This is the back. It's got the little opening thingy here. This is the front, okay? So I want to find a piece that when I put my pins up, my little ink blotchy thing that has the letter B is on this side. So it's not that one. It is going to be this one, okay? So if I match this up here and I look, I can see the blue B. We are good. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this up here. I'm going to pin, I think that pin is going dull is what I think. Okay. I'm going to pin both sides of this seam allowance to keep it open and nice and flat. All right. Now, I'm going to come all the way down here to the bottom. And at that point, 5/8 of an inch in, I want these two pieces to match up. So this is actually peeking out a little bit there. That's okay. It's at that point I need them to match. Okay, so now, because you know I didn't transfer notches and everything, I am just going to try to even it out and pin it together. So at this point here, you can see it is pretty much even. There's a little bit longer over here, but honestly it's fleece. I can just give it a slight tug and it's going to work out. So let me get this pinned together and then we'll work on the front. Again, starting, this is the front side I'm going to be matching up here. This is pinned up at the top. My cat wants attention. We're just going to ignore her. I'm pinning this together at the bottom here. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, and now the bottom part should be flat. And the same that I'm going to do here, I actually did over here. The sleeve, where the sleeve is curved, you have to kind of, I'm sticking my thumbs into it because I want to work the sleeve cap in. So if you can see, at that 5/8 inch seam line, it fits really well. It's like right up here at the very edge, there's a little bit of ruffling. That's just in the seam allowance, it's not at the stitching line, okay? What I really want to be concerned with is that it is nice and smooth at that seam line, okay? So because everything is matching up so well, I am not too worried about the bottoms matching up here. If I had pinned it and things were really out of proportion and I had to stagger down there, that's a different story. But since it's laying so nicely, I'm going to go ahead and just sew this on normally, you know, one side to another. Okay, so this is Rosie. She's my big old 24111 from 1945 that I'm going to be using. She is a beast. But I brought you over here because I was going to try to put my walking foot on her. I had never tried that. And sometimes these are really good for if you're using a thick fabric that might want to feed unevenly. These will feed from the top and the bottom. It's like adding feed dogs on both sides, so it feeds evenly. But I had this for another high shank machine, but unfortunately it does not work on this one without me changing out a screw, and I did not feel like doing that. But while I was hunting around my, you know, miscellaneous feet up there, I grabbed this one, and I bought this a couple of years ago and never used it, so I figured this is the time and I want to show it to you. I think it's actually more for faux fur and things like that with a big nappy pile on it that could get trapped in the feed dogs as they sew, like lace and things like that would be good too. But it has these rings that just turn. So let me see if I can get her going and I'll show you how it runs. It's pretty neat. Actually turning off her light makes it better. So here we go. If you can see, these are just turning around, and so it's giving an even feed from the top and the bottom, which is kind of cool. I don't remember the exact name for it, but it's just a neat little extra foot. I thought I would point that out to you. Let me get this sewn on and I'll meet you back at the table. I want to show you after I got that sleeve sewn on, I did come back and I went ahead and pressed it open. You usually don't press open the seams up here, but I did because I want it to lay nice and flat, and for fleece I think that is fine. So this is the little shoulder seam looking well. I'm going to go ahead and sew the other one on just like I did this one, and then we will work on the neck binding. I'm going to have to cut my own bias strip to do that, though I'm not using purchased bias tape. Okay, now the sleeves are on, and I need to make a bias strip that's going to go around my band. If it was a woven, I would cut it on the bias. Since this fleece has stretch this way, I'm actually going to cut my strips that direction so that, you know, they can flex that way. This little piece is almost long enough, but not quite. Look at those cute little foxes. So I'm going to cut two strips and sew them together, as you do. So I'm just going to cut an even across the top, cut a 2-inch strip, and then another 2-inch strip, and then just sew them together at their ends. Really easy. I got my strips sewed together. I'm just gonna pink that raw edge, you know, and you know what? I'm gonna press it open too, just to make it as flat as possible so I can have one continuous strip. Okay, so this is an opening in the back. I don't want my seam to end up in the very front, you know, it probably isn't a big deal. It actually really blends there, but still, I think I would feel better putting it over the shoulder seam. So I'm just gonna start pinning that right there, just, you know, because I can, to give me an idea of where I would need to start, because I'm going to start my sewing over on this side, right here. Okay, I decided I would go ahead and leave it on and show you putting that on, but I wanted to show you this foot I actually got, you know, here. Not a sponsor, wish they were. And what it is for velvet. It is the Velvet double-sided ring non-stick foot. Yes, I paid a hefty bit for it, and yes, this is the first time I've used it, but now that I'm using it, I think I'll probably use it more often because I really like it. It keeps things from getting jammed up in there, and it feeds really smoothly. So let me go ahead and get my fabric underneath here. Okay, so let's see if I can, you know what, I'm going to turn this light off. I think that works better. Okay, so I'm just going to put these two cut edges together. Okay, and at this point it's still kind of straight, but at this point, see how my neckline wants to start curving over? Well, first of all, I'm going to make sure that I don't have anything underneath there where I don't want it to be, but I'm going to keep this strip coming straight out towards me, okay? And as I'm sewing, put a hand under here to make sure I only am sewing through what I want. But I'm just gonna, like a couple inches at a time, move my neckline over so it stays straight. Okay, so right here you can see it wants to come back out again, so I'm just gonna move that over, leave my tape straight, keep going, and open this up. The big thing is to make sure you don't sew under extra layers underneath there. And also you want to make sure that you don't stretch your neckline out of shape. And normally if it was another garment, I probably would have stay stitched this neckline before I did all of this, but it's fleece, it's a cape, it's going to be fine, you know. So like right here, where this is coming out, I'm moving it over and sewing it straight. Okay, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm almost to the end already. Okay, so the whole point of all of that moving and everything was to keep from stretching this out of shape before it's time. So at this point, there's a couple ways you can do your bias tape. I don't have the instructions in front of me, so I'm not too sure which one they want. You can do it like, so it's going to look like this on the outside with a little band there, or like this on the outside with no band showing. I'm going to go with this one just because for this fabric, I don't mind the band, and the other way is going to make it really, really thick with this fleece. Okay, so let me go back to the table and I'll show you how I pin that. Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong side here. This is my neckline, and I need to trim this. I'm actually going to come out here about 1/2 inch beyond the edge and trim that off of both sides first. About like that. Okay. Put my scissors back in my scissor block, which I love. Okay, so now what I want is to turn this edge under, match it up to where my seam line is on the inside, and I'm going to use a clip. Normally, if this was a flat fabric and this was a regular cotton woven bias tape, I would be stitching this by machine. Oh, I want to show you. To fold this in, instead of just going like that, I'm kind of pushing this corner up so it's at a diagonal and then turning it in just so that, you know, it'll be like that. But anyway, what I was going to say is that when I'm using a woven cotton type bias tape, I would stitch this on by machine, but since this is so thick and it's fleece and everything, I'm just going to hand stitch this down. It's not going to take me much time. But what I want to make sure of as I'm going all the way around here is that the neckline is staying in its original shape here. So this piece is kind of curving. This is the back here, so that it's going to match up with that curve that the neckline had. And coming up here to the front, you know, I want this seam allowance to get smoothed up into that part. Folding this over about 3/8 of an inch or so. Coming down here just beyond where that stitching line is, okay? And because I cut this on a stretchy part, I can go ahead and mold it to come around these curves, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple clips here. I've got it molded around. I'm just gonna get some matching thread and a needle, and somewhat invisibly on the underside here, I'm gonna go ahead and whip stitch this edge down. Okay, so I've got my neckline all done, whip stitched in, you know. We still need to put a button or hook or whatever back here. But I'm going to do that after I deal with the edge. Now, a normal person would probably turn up the bottom and edge stitch it and make a nice little hem. But I am not feeling very normal today. And I put this on my dress form, and I like the way that it's a little bit flowy, and I'm thinking that if I made a hem that was, you know, turned under, that would actually add enough bulk that I wouldn't get that flowiness. So I would really only turn it up once. But I have a bunch of trim, and this is a fun garment. And so I have grabbed some trim that I have been holding on to for the longest time and never using. And so I decided I'm going to use this on the hem. It's like this mesh out here with several rows of black sequins. Doesn't that just look fun? So I'm going to actually start it in the back here. And what I'm going to do is turn it face down, and I'm going to sew it. I need to open up the seam allowance flat here, but I want to sew it so I have probably about 1/8 of an inch of raw fabric sticking out from where this mesh is. And my thought is, if I can edge stitch it right here, get you closer. My thought is, if I can edge stitch it right here, right along this row, it's face down right now, then I can turn it, and I'm just going to have that sequin stuff at the very edge. And then turning under this extra mesh is not a big deal, and I can whip stitch that on the inside. But I'm going to have a whole cuff at the edge looking like that, which I think is fun. I am in the mood to have fun. Last month's challenge was fabulous, but it was not fun. It was very serious. So this is the name of the game for this time. So I'm just going to take this over to my sewing machine and kind of place it as I go, eyeballing about 1/8 of an inch of fabric here before my mesh. Use a edge foot, like a zipper foot, and trying to get as close to these sequins as I can all the way around my garment. Okay, so I've got it sewn on there, right there. So now my hope is that I can just turn it down and then tuck that netting under, and then I can just come back and secure the netting. I might even hand stitch that too. You never know. Let me use clips on these. I think that'll be easier than pins on all this sequins. But that's going to be the look for it. And I think that is super fun. Super duper fun. Actually, what if that would be better? Okay, so I've just changed my mind. So instead of bringing the netting over the edge, I'm just going to fold it behind the sequins here, lay this on top. The sequin still should be peeking out just a hair, and then with black thread I can just whip stitch this edge, this raw edge to the sequins, and that will be even less, you know, stuff to look at back here, which I don't want. So there you go, that's what I'm gonna do. So before I take it down, I thought I'd show you, I did switch to the rust color thread. I think that will work. So that raw edge is just kind of sticking down. I'm putting my needle through that little raw edge and everything into the backing of the sparkles. Sequins. I couldn't remember the word for sequins. But even when I stick it through, it doesn't come through on that side, so, but it's enough to give me a good anchor point to secure this hem to, okay? So that's what I'm doing. Going all the way around. So on the right side, it's gonna look like this and be nice and secure. Okay, I am back. So I've got my fabulous sparkly hem on there. I think that it looks nice and neat on the inside, fabulous on the outside. So the next thing I'm going to do is tackle this little back closure here. You need to be able to unbutton it to get your head in there. So I have this shank button right there, and I'm going to be sewing it on this side over here, and then I'm going to come back and put my little thread loop over on this side. But let me get this button sewn on first. Okay, so my button is on there. Hope you can see that. I feel like my camera's not focusing right. Okay. So I'm using some pretty substantial thread here. It's my Army button thread, double-stranded. And I'm going to start my loop down here. I'm just going to draw a line with my needle of where the bottom of my button is. And I'm going to have this come up actually about halfway up this little folded hemmed band area, just because I think that that's pretty strong right there. And then come back and make a little back stitch in it up there. All right. Now, in order to get to the top of the button, I need to go way up here. Again, you know what? I'm going to go all the way through this first stitch. Going through that many layers of fleece, it's a little bit tight. Now, I don't want this to be super tight, so what I'm going to do is stick my butter knife in here so that that's going to keep it nice and flat, you know. I actually use my butter knife all the time here, but to take the battery out of my camera, I need it, so there you go. So now that that is there, I'm going to come back down here and probably do it one more time. Up here, and that should give me enough of a little loop that they're not going to be super tight. Okay. So pulling my thumb through there, you can kind of see the amount of gap that's going to be, and that's good. So I'm going to do one more little back stitch here just to anchor this amount of thread in place. And then hopefully I will have enough thread left on this needle to do a very loose chain. So what I'm doing is putting my needle underneath all of the threads, coming up, going through the loop. Sorry about that, allergies again. And then that makes a little cover knot for it, kind of like a buttonhole knot or something like that. If I had a whole lot of thread left on this needle, I would probably do them a lot tighter together. But I don't, and I want to get this all done with just the one shot here. So let me just do a couple more, and I think I'll be able to stretch it all the way over to this side. All right, that looks pretty good. A nice thick loop right there, okay? And I'm going to go straight down over here. And then do a few back stitches behind here to lock it in. And, oh my goodness, it's hard to pull this through. And then one the opposite direction at a 90-degree angle, because that's going to lock it in well, and cut that off. Okay, so now hopefully I can button my button here. Okay, so it is in, And when I pull them apart, those two pieces lay side by side, so that is great. Okay, now the last thing is, remember there was a couple dots here? Well, what they want you to do is match up the front seam of your sleeve to the back seam of your sleeve. And where's the shoulder seam? Up here. Okay, this is the back I'm looking at. And then stitch within those two dots together. And even on their diagram, you can see that the back is visible. The front is higher, and those dots are going to be right about here. Let me get that pattern piece and I'll show it to you. I'm hemming and hawing because I'm debating on if I want to do that or not, because I'm always going to be wearing this over another garment. I'm not going to be wearing it as a blouse, you know. So I don't know. Let me go ahead and get my sleeve piece matched up just so we can see where we are. So this is my front over here. So if I match up, my piece, my dots for my size, I'm just going to go based on the original size here, are going to be like this, okay? That's where my two dots are. And I would have to line that up exactly with the ditch in the back. And stitching in the ditch in these two layers and having it match exactly on the back is going to be pretty near impossible in getting it exact. So I might just skip this. So I'll tell you what they want you to do, but I'm going to be skipping it. How's that for a plan? If in a perfect world you were following their directions, between these two dots, you would mark those dots where I have my pins, line this up exactly with the seam line in the back, and to do that I would have to stick a pin straight down and make sure it's coming up. And if you can see, it's coming up like an 1/8 of an inch or so over, so then I would have to move that pin over until it was lined up exactly, you know what I mean, and then stitch between those two pins. I'm not going to. I don't think it's worth it for what I need and for the ease and mobility that I want to have. So let me pop this onto my dress form so we can see what she looks like. Okay, all right, I have volume. So here it is. I love this. It is so fun, and it's really so cozy. I put my arms underneath here, you know, it's super cozy. I like my sparkly hem. You don't need to do a sparkly hem, but I wanted to, and I like how low it comes back here, so, you know, I think it's great. It's easy, it's pretty darn fast. Could make a great gift. I might do some of these for gifting time, you know, because there's so many fun fleeces out there, and it's nice to find a pattern that I can actually make a usable thing that's not just a blanket out of it. So anyhow, I love it. I love it. I'm actually going to be putting this video out 1 week ahead of time because my October is going to be very busy. I have to go turn off my oven. I have this, next week's my daughter's wedding, and then another video after that, so it's going to be a busy week for me. Hope you like this. Hope you have some fun sewing for the October 2024 sewing challenge. And if you're not already a member of my Facebook group, My Bucolic Life Sewists, that's where you post your entries. Love to see what everyone's up to, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, free, healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.